Okay, welcome back. We've made it to our second episode, Dustin.
Woohoo!
Which is two more than we thought we were going to be doing a year ago. But this is the second episode of the We Were Young podcast, a podcast that is very young. Today we have two more special guests that people may recognize. One of our guests from the CBS News footage of Apache Troop. That is at 9.3 million views. He is very recognizable because at least once a week people comment on it saying, that must have been Rambo with that M60 machine gun, one hand in it, or Animal Mother. But actually we have high school sweethearts who stayed together through Vietnam and got married upon returning, have raised a very large, beautiful family together. And we're talking to Duane and Mary Bloor, live from Wisconsin. Did I say that right?
Quite.
Hello.
And did I cover everything for anything you want to add for the intro?
No.
All right. That's the type of great answers that are going to drive. So,
Conversation driving dialogue. That's what we always appreciate about you, Duane.
and I am coming to you live from the offices of Rainbows and Unicorns Entertainment, which to let you know, that means it's down the hall from the playroom and across from the guest room. And my neighbor is mowing his lawn right now, so hopefully that doesn't come through, but it's the times we live in. So and you're in New Mexico, Dustin? How's New Mexico?
Yeah, I'm in the satellite studio. You can tell that's where I am because it's mud.
Our satellite offices in Taos, New
Exactly.
Mexico.
Exactly.
Not legally satellite, in case the IRS is listening. Joking satellite office.
No.
So for those of you watching on, we got to do my whatever hat I'm going to wear this week to cut down on the glare on my head. And since I did not make the same mistake of last week of wearing the green shirt with the green backgrounds, and I have on the black shirt, I'm going to go with my black thin blue line hat in honor of the first responders, especially my friends still working at Customs and Border Protection, a true front line of the coronavirus. Well, actually, I'd love to take a shift at the airport right now with all international travel banned. Seems like
Standing
a good.
around doing nothing.
Yeah. So, but we are super excited to have Duane and Mary. Mary, you were quite wily. You tried to get out of this. Every time we asked you, you kept saying Duane would be happy to do it.
Yeah. He's
But-
very happy to do it. Yeah.
He looks very happy to do it.
Yeah.
I do what I'm told.
Well, that's probably why you've stayed married so long.
That's right. That's right.
But we are excited to have you, Mary, because this really is, especially with what we're trying to do with this podcast. I mean, yes, this is the soldier's experience, but it's the whole family's story and your experience as well. We'll get into it, but Duane gives you a lot of credit for helping him when he came home. But Duane, we're going to start with the first question, like we started with Doc, in terms of how you joined the Army. I know there's a story behind this that comes across in our movie, Apache Blues, Welcome Home. But did you volunteer for the Army, or were you voluntold?
Oh, I volunteered the draft, and in doing that, you still go wherever they tell you. It's just like all it does is it sets you a date to get going. And so I wasn't able to, like, if you volunteer, you could pick an MOS. You may not get it, but you can pick it. But yes, I volunteered the draft.
Would you say you were of sound mind when you volunteered, or were there some incidents leading up to that night that had you and your friends go and volunteer for the draft?
I would have to say no. I was not of solid mind. I had a friend that was leaving for Vietnam. He was home on his 30-day leave, and it's tradition in my home that we take him out and party and get him drunk and try to get him to relax a little bit. And I guess we drank too much. And next thing I knew, we were in Viroqua at the Selective Service office, volunteered the draft. And I remember somebody saying something in there that, well, these guys are inebriated. And they said, that's all right. They're going to go anyway. But we were A1, it was just a matter of time. So, yeah.
And then you ended up all the way in Vietnam and probably wanted to quit drinking, huh?
Yeah, that was my first thought. And that was when we was on the bus headed to Milwaukee. I thought, I probably should stop drinking this. Things aren't going just right.
So, Mary, for you, I mean, you guys were dating at that point, correct?
Right. We were since I was 15.
And how did you take that news when he came home and said, I volunteered for the draft?
Well, yeah, it's funny now, but it wasn't funny at the time. No, I was upset, but he said the sooner I go, the sooner I come back. So
He
That
does
makes
have a
sense.
point.
Yeah.
That's, some backward logic, but there is logic in there.
well, not really, but
All right, so Duane, you're spirited off to Vietnam, and we know you ended up in Apache Troop. Did you go there right away, or how did you find your way there?
Well, once you get the Benoit, then you lay around there a couple days, and wherever they need bodies, that's where you go. And the first of the night in the cab, they took some real bad hits. They had some that were killed, and this was all in one ambush, and they needed 7 men. So we just right down the road, they says, you 7 are gonna go to first of the night. Everyone there kind of told us, they says, you can go any place you wanna, but don't go to the first of the night. And you always wonder, why did they say that?
They're saying it, and they need 7 more people like right away. The
Yeah.
math's not adding up for you, huh?
Yeah, it was adding up pretty fast. But it was all done then. That we got our papers all in order, and we was off in the helicopter headed to Tay Nim.
So you carried the M60, the heavy machine gun. Had you already been trained on that before joining First of the Ninth, or was that kind of the role you fell into when you got there?
Well, my MS was 11 Bravo, which is infantry, and yes, I was qualified with it in basic and AIT. I knew a lot about it.
All right. So you've joined Apache Troop. How long? You land in Tay Ninh. How long until your first mission?
I believe it was 2.5 days. They issued us our equipment, and seemed like we didn't even have my bed made yet. The first thing they told us, that whistle goes off, you grab your gear, it's a scramble, and there's a downed bird. So they did tell us that much, and these guys were really sharp. They explained what your job was, and we had some great leadership, and you learned fast. It was all OJT, but you learned it very quick.
So were you introducing yourself to people on the helicopter as you're flying out there, or?
A couple of us was hanging around together, Joe Henry from Iowa and myself. And so we got to be friends right away. Wisconsin, Iowa, that's not very
That's not
far
very
apart. And I believe we was both made gunners at first, and M16, you know, and they don't want you up there in the front of the line without knowing what you're looking for.
Yeah. So that first mission, you as Apache Troop would do multiple missions a week. You know, bird goes down and you're off. What was it like for you as Duane Bloor the first time you entered combat, the first time the bullets started flying? Do you remember? Is that a day that you remember, or does it all flow together?
Backing up just a little, while I was, you know, getting my equipment and, you know, learning some of the things to do, like the rappelling and things like that. I remember there was a couple guys running around camp there, and then Espinado was one of them, and he had a bandaged up head. He was one of them that was wounded in the prior battle that got him so short on men. And he, you know, you like to ask these guys questions, but you always looked at their boots. And if their boots were all muddy and worn, you had a lot of respect for those people because you knew they'd been there for a while, and you listened to what they told you. So they did help us quite a bit before we went. But then the other question you were asking was the first time I went in. The first time we were in a firefight. We had a down bird, and we were probably 3 clicks, 2-3 clicks. It was a long way. And the situation is we try to get to the downed bird before the NBA do, because they'll either capture or kill the crew, and it's like a race. But they know we're coming, and it's easy to set up an ambush when they know what line you're taking. But we, like I said, these guys, they were very good at what they did, and everybody had to be. We never went in with more than 21 guys. Most of the time it was 16, 17, and if you get hit and take a couple casualties right away, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. And Mary, I'm sure he was writing you religiously and telling you everything. What was it like for you, you know, knowing that he was over there?
That was horrible. I was a senior in high school at first, so scary stuff. It was, you know, and he would write, but I don't think he told me, you know, too much, but enough that it scared me to pieces. I would write, you know, 2 and 3 times a day back to him, but it would take so long. It isn't like it is now, you know. I mean, it would take 2 weeks, sometimes more, to get a letter to him or from him. So sometimes I just didn't know if he was dead or alive, or, you know, I did a lot of praying.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you send off a question and it's a month and a half till you can get an answer.
Exactly. Yeah. It It was bad. And then his best friend in high school had both of his legs blown off while he was over there. I didn't write and tell him that, but I think other people did. So it was a bad time. It was really scary.
Yeah. Well, you did get a up close view of what it was like for him over there, courtesy of CBS News.
Right?
They reached out to you beforehand, right? I mean, you knew it was coming.
Yeah, they did. They called early in the morning, and my mom came and got me, and she didn't know what happened. She said they're just asking for you, for the fiance of Duane Bloor, and her eyes were huge, like, oh my God. And then they said that he was going to be on CBS News, and that he must have told them to call me. And then it was on at 7 in the morning, and then it was on at 6 o'clock, and I think 10 o'clock on Walter Cronkite. So we did, and that was scary. As you know, Craig gets shot on there. And yeah, that was horrifying. And I didn't know when they called me, you know what I thought. That was terrible. That was terrifying. But yeah, that was just, and then seeing him walk through the jungle. And then they mentioned that he was going to meet me in Hawaii in a couple of weeks. And
Did you know
and
you were
like
going to meet him in Hawaii?
pardon me?
Did you know you were going to meet him in Hawaii in a couple?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we had our plans made. Yeah. He had, when we were over there, I think he had like 3 months left to go when he went back then. So it was, we saw a lot of things when we were over there, but I knew at that time that things were not right with him either. And we had plans to get married, and our plans were put off because I could see that he wasn't the same person he was when he left.
You married him anyway?
Yep, married him anyway. Just a little later.
I wasn't strange.
Well, a little bit.
It's a low bar, Duane. That's a low bar.
I had to learn really fast how to deal with flashbacks and that kind of stuff. And I was 19, so it was really rough. But I had the good Lord above on my side, and somehow he directed me what to do. So
All right.
it worked out okay, yeah.
And we will definitely go in depth on that. And I just wanted to ask, on the CBS call, did they at least have an idea that this could be a traumatic call, like the scene in We Were Soldiers when the cab driver goes up to the door and it's just like, hey, I got this thing, and you made me think my husband was dead. Did they at least kind of soft sell it or know that this was, or just?
Nope, she just said that we were told to call you and let you know that your fiance would be on the CBS News with Walter Cronkite, and she told me what times, and that was all she said, really.
So he could be
I
getting
didn't-
medal, or he could be in the hospital for all you know.
Right, yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, it was, we really could write a book. We had we had a lot of stuff happen during that time.
I'll buy it.
Yeah.
Only if you autograph it, though, Mary.
Yeah.
Duane,
Oh,
you're-
we sure would, wouldn't we?
Yeah, if Craig writes it.
Yeah.
From your perspective, Duane, like we were saying, that video is it's over 9 million views. People call you Rambo, people call you Animal Mother, and to you, you're Duane. And how old you were? 20 then?
Yeah.
Like we asked Doc last week, when you watch that, you're forever 20 years old in war. Well, first of all, did you think like Doc, like who's ever gonna watch this? Like, what was it like for you to even have the crew along?
Yeah, I think we was all a little worried taking them along because their presence was taking a spot up for another gun and a rifle. And I don't know, I think we were all a little worried. We were just hoping that we wouldn't hit anything too bad that day or nothing at all. And that didn't really work out.
Well, you'd been sent back into an area you just had a massive engagement 6 days prior. You know, the day that you all thought you should have died, there were so many people there. So it was kind of almost foregone that something was going to happen that day.
Yeah, we was a little nervous. Took, you know, we was precautious and a little bit more than you really are on any other mission, but because we all had, you got a sixth sense if something's going to happen, and I believe everyone has it. But when it's just bad, and you want your best guys up front if possible, you know, just when it all goes down, and the guys that are behind you, you know they're going to do their job, and you don't even look back behind you because they've got to take care of that, and then they do.
Well, and also, it's very not only famous inside that footage of you one-handing the M60 across, that footage of you, Duane Bloor, one-handing the M60 has ended up in unrelated news reports. It's ended up in movies. You know, the YouTube compilations of Vietnam, I'll watch it. I'm like, there's Duane. You know, Craig likes to say that he's been shot working for 4 different branches of the military in every section of Vietnam with the way that video gets used. But going with that, like we talked with Doc, a lot of people think that footage is fake because how can you one-hand an M60? How did they know to have the camera on you? As someone who was actually there, is there anything you'd like to say, or how does that make you feel to hear comments like that?
Well, a little disgusting probably, but we didn't do anything that we didn't do in any other mission. That's exactly the way it rolled. On just, you know, there was nothing set up. Those boys were hiding under the smallest rock they could find. They was scared, and we was pretty well used to it. But yeah, I remember Throckhill telling one of his cameramen to get up and get some footage, and he said, "Kiss my ass," he says. "You want footage? You go get it." And he ducked back down under a stump.
Probably a smart idea. Well, and in terms of one-handing that M60, it's not exactly a sniper rifle. Like, it's got a specific job, right?
Yeah, I took a liking to it right away, and I did a little work on it. I put an aviation gun plate on it. It was lighter, and in the video I had a long barrel on it. But I normally had a cut-off barrel, and but I burnt that up, so I had to put a new barrel on. But then I had the maintenance crew cut my springs. Just, I can't remember what they cut off, like 6 inches, 5 inches, and then we stretched them, and that made it a weaker spring, and it cut down the rate of fire, which I wanted to save ammo with it. I just, you know, and keep my barrel from burning up if at a lower rate, and that all worked out well. But every time it went off, you had about 3 feet of fire out in front of that barrel, and that was probably, you know, attractive in the bush, but it did set a few fires.
And that video cuts off with Craig being airlifted out and talking about how he's got a ticket home, which he didn't, but that wasn't the end of your day though. Like Craig took off, but you guys still had to hump it out of there with the news crew. Well, what's it like for you seeing a teammate, a fellow squad member airlifted out, just got shot in both legs, onto the hospital, but you are still out there and probably doubtful you got all of the enemy? What's your mindset?
Well, it's very bad for the team to lose anyone, but when you lose a Craig Jorgensen, that was vital to our whole crew. That goes through your mind too. And but everybody's got to continue to do their job. You really can't reflect on what's happened. You've got to reflect on what's going to happen. And we just all did our job, and we got out of there.
Excellent. Dustin, I'm monopolizing. You go.
My question is more along the lines, is more to Mary. Kind of, what was your mindset headed out to Hawaii? How were you? Like, were you excited? Was it like a vacation? I feel like, how many times have you been to Hawaii since? Right, like you don't go to Hawaii a lot.
No, I had never been on a plane. I was only 19, and I'd never been any place by myself. So to say I was excited, that's, yeah, definitely. And then I hadn't seen him for all those months either. And then when I got there, he wasn't there. He didn't come till the next day. So, but they took me to the officers club and let me stay there in a room. And there was a lot of drunk people going by, but I was all right. I was safe. So, and the next day they had him come. They had a big bus that pulled up, and they had all these women that lined up then, and then they got off the bus and they came to find us. And we were actually on TV at that time. They had the news people there doing a story on us at that time. We watched it at 6 o'clock that night, didn't we? But yeah, I was excited.
There's footage of you guys in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Dave, we got.
How are we just learning this?
You got to tell us these things beforehand, man.
Well, we don't have it. We saw it on their news, but it was that's how they did it.
I just gotta make a note, search Hawaii news people. What island?
Waikiki.
Waikiki. No.
All right, Oahu.
Oahu, I guess. Yeah.
All right.
We stayed on Waikiki Beach. Yeah.
Hawaii.
Hawaii. So, how long was it until you saw the news footage, Duane? It's not like you saved it to your DVR and.
Did you review it on your 16mm film camera later that day?
No, not until I was home.
I think it was when we went to the first reunion in Fargo, North Dakota. They had it reel to reel, and they played it for us. But I think that was the first time you saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was, 87, 88?
Yeah.
Let's bring up you're at a reunion, so you're already dealing with emotions, and then you're seeing yourself on there for the first time. Did that stir anything up for you, or were you just like, yeah, I was kind of a badass?
No, I never considered myself a badass. I was just part of the team.
I actually figured that's the way you were going to answer.
I feel like every member of this team says, "Oh, I was just there."
No matter how much we try, or people don't know, there's some hidden footage of Threlkeld interviewing you for about 15, 20 minutes, and he tries so hard to get you to say, I'm a soldier and I like killing, and you just swipe it off left and right. but you could tell at that point you really wanted, no part of it anymore, and you wanted to come home. And you did come home. I would normally ask if you were different, but we're going to let Mary cover that in a second. But how was your greeting? Everyone we've talked to, it actually does run the gamut. Like, not everyone had protesters. Some people actually got very nice welcomes back to the States. How was your welcome back from war?
Well, it wasn't so good. Yeah, I met up with some protesters in Oakland, and they right away I figured out they wasn't there to welcome me, and just as soon as I'd have jumped on the bird and went back. But that bothers you, it just, I think on another interview I told you that I just stood there and tears running down my face, and I felt those protesters reached in and took my heart right out of my chest. I was so upset about the whole thing. I thought I did everything I could while I was over there, and I thought it would be appreciated, and it wasn't. But like Mary and the family that wrote, they didn't really tell me about all the protesting. They figured I had enough on my plate already, and which is true.
That may have been a mistake though, because he wasn't prepared, but I just always thought he had enough problems. We didn't need him worrying about stuff like that, but
Well, and it does, like we talked to Dr. Roy Clymer, who deals with PTS, and what he's saying is, and he's a Vietnam veteran. I want to choose my words very carefully. What happens, and what he told us is what happens when soldiers go to war, like they need to be able to wrap themselves, and I'm speaking very figuratively, wrap themselves up in the flag in terms of this is a just cause. And when you come home and have people telling you it wasn't just, you've basically taken away the whole platform from the soldiers. Like, it does take away their sense. And stop me if you don't agree with this, Duane. I would say it was probably right not to tell them, because it would be, I feel, harmful to tell a soldier no one believes in what you're doing while they're over there. What are your thoughts, Duane? Are you glad she didn't tell you, or?
No, she did the right thing. I did have enough to worry about, and I might have did things different, maybe then I might not have made it home then. But I think she handled this all just perfect from the start. She had me read.
So there you go, Mary. You did right.
I don't know. I know when he got to Chicago, though, we were all waiting for him. His mom and his stepdad and his brothers and his sister. Well, not one brother, but one brother and his sister. And gosh, I don't know, a whole bunch of family when he got to Chicago. So nothing happened there. Everybody was really good. And when he got home to Mount Tabor, where he was from, everybody was glad to see him. So it was just when he landed in California.
Well, yeah, Oakland was kind of the center, the epicenter for it all. Oh, did we lose you?
So,
Are you there, Dustin?
I'm here,
Yeah.
Dave.
Oh, nope, they were back for a second. The downfall of technology, relying on
that connection, slow motion.
Yeah.
it. There we go. You sounded like you were on auto tune, like the singers. We got you back. Are you back?
Says your network bandwidth is low.
Looks like
Uh,
you're on some drug.
That's better now.
Well,
Look at
Yeah.
need some glow sticks, Dustin.
yeah.
Well, you know, a moment of levity and a heavier subject. Um, like I said, normally we would ask you, Duane, as the veteran, if you felt like you were a different person than the Duane who left. But Mary's already touched on this. But what were your impressions, Mary? You know, the Duane that left you compared to the Duane that came home.
Well, he was really hardened, like he would get upset really easy and he would have flashbacks of where he thought he was there. And I always would try to tell him things, like call him by his nickname that his family called him when he was younger and things to kind of bring him back because he didn't know who I was sometimes. He would be just gone and he would be angry at the drop of a hat, and that wasn't who he was when he left. And sometimes I just didn't know who he was, but we worked through it. And like I say, I had the good Lord on my side to help me through it. If it wouldn't have been for that, I don't know. But we took a little extra time, and we had nowhere to turn. There was nobody. The VA took no responsibility, and family and friends, they wanted him to be the same way he was when he left. I mean, I did too, but he wasn't. And it was a lot to deal with. So people just would kind of ignore it. And so it was a hard time. He was definitely different, but we worked through it.
Well, yeah, and PTSD wasn't a thing. I mean, not that it wasn't a medically diagnosed. You know,
Right.
the medical community didn't know that.
Right.
Shell shock. I remember when I was in elementary school. I want to say this without sounding, like I'm making fun of you because I wasn't born at that. When I was in elementary school in the '80s, one of our teachers was a Vietnam vet, and it was always like, "Oh, don't talk to them about Vietnam." Like, they're gonna have flashbacks, and just kind of. And now we know that probably was the exact opposite of how we should have treated that, because he wanted to talk. He would bring in his uniforms and talk about it, but we were told, don't ask him. And it's like, well, this guy just told us about how he was in the Army, and I'm like a grade school boy, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you talk about flashbacks, Duane, of everyone we've talked to, I'd say that you've told us most vividly. You have the most vivid flashbacks. For the
Or at least
audience,
most vocal about it.
what?
He's been the most vocal about it. Like, he tells a better story.
Well, and for the audience, what is it like when you say you would have a flashback? Like when you were driving your truck, what is a flashback like for people who don't know?
Well, other than the nightmares you have, while you're sleeping, I drove semi, and I would be driving through the mountains out in Pennsylvania, and I would actually see a VC up on a rock with an RPG closing in on me, and I could hear AKs going off. I've stopped halfway up a mountain, put my flashers on, pulled over, and got out underneath my truck. So that if that RPG hit me, it wouldn't, it wouldn't blow me all the heck with the. My whole heart rate goes up right now and this is also real. I mean, I would get up over the mountain, and I'd get off on the first exit, and I'd look my rig over for bullet holes, because I knew, that I was hit several times. I could hear them thumping on the truck.
Hmm.
And, you know, who do you talk to? You just
Just the
sit there.
next guy who happens along.
Pardon?
Just the next guy who happens along.
Yeah, I had that happen one time, and he put his flashers on, and I was laying behind the duals on the tractor. I said, get your ass down. I says, we're they're on both sides of this road, and I says, there's a guy right up there with an RPG, and I says, you gotta keep down because they're gonna get you. And he just says, he says, you need some help, and he got up and left. That was the last I seen of him. Well, I realize now I needed some help, but at the time I thought he was kind of a dumbass not to heed my warning. And there's nothing that's scarier than that.
Well, and Mary, you've told me that he would call you after that, and what would he say?
Well, he called me and he told me they're all around. I can just see their eyeballs. They're all around the truck. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And, he talked like that for a while, and I tried to talk him down and tried to bring him back to reality, and he hung up. And there I am all alone with those kids, and I didn't even know where he was. He didn't even bother telling me where he was. I mean, he was so out of it. And I was terrified, and I had nobody to talk to or anybody to, to ask about it. And so I just prayed a lot, and then he called me back, and he was better. But it was, hours before he called me back. So I was terrified. And there wasn't one thing I could do. We didn't have cell phones then. So I had no way of getting a hold of him. And this happened to him a few times, and he didn't want me to tell his boss about it, because he could have lost his job.
Right.
So I couldn't say anything to anybody without getting into a lot of trouble. But it was terrible.
But vets that are out there, you know what I'm talking about. This is a real thing. It's not a joke. And after all this I went through, I tell you, if you would listen to this whole thing here, we're trying to help you, and believe me, we can. It's definitely there's ways to handle this, and don't ever think that swallowing a barrel is gonna do it. There's ways. You've got to talk to it. Well, we'll probably get in more into that later on, but
Let's dive in right now. Duane, have you felt better since talking to us? Have you felt worse since talking to us? What is talking about your experience done for you?
Well, I mainly, when I started this, I wanted to try to help other vets. And in doing so, I helped myself. We get to talking, and these reunions help me so much. I just got to thank all the guys that's been to them, and it's just seeing that everybody's okay, and you can talk to them, you can meet their wives and their kids, and it's you don't. There's one thing about the whole thing: you don't get over it, you don't forget it. You never will forget it if that's what you think. You've got to learn to live with it, and you've got to learn to talk about it. I mean, this is history, and your family deserves to know what you went through, and then they can understand where you're at in your mind. And I just thank you guys so much for doing this, because you can't believe how much you've helped me.
Well, and actually, we talked about it. You've seen the episode that Doc did. You were one of the kind of watershed moments. You know, when you make a documentary, the adage is, if at the end of the documentary you made the movie you thought you were going to make, you weren't listening. You weren't listening to your subjects. You made an opinion piece. In the interview that we did with you, I remember, I don't think you moved the whole time. You had that chair gripped down there in Vegas until Charles turned off the camera. And I was watching you, and the second the camera turned off, I could see you just go. And then we went to dinner that night, and it was the same thing with Ed the next day. We went to dinner that night, and you were so animated and talking and happy. And I looked at Dustin, and I'm like, there's something here. You know, we didn't start out thinking we were going to make a movie about the power of talking about your experiences. But you guys being so open about it is what allowed us to see that. So, you know, you thank us, but the credit goes to you, Duane, because, you know, look at Dustin with his mohawk and me with my baseball hats and everything, and you guys trusted us. And, you know, the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done on this movie was calling all of you guys asking if you'd be in it, because you've never met us. You know, here's some guy calling you from Seattle like, hey, want to tell your whole life story to a stranger for the world to see? You know, what I know that Craig had called people and told them that, you know, we could be trusted, but what was it like when I called you and asked if you wanted to be in the movie?
Well, I think I was probably about the same as the rest of the guys. Once we found out what you was really after, and you wasn't looking for battle stories and blood and guts, and that you really, I feel that this kind of turned around as it was being made, and that's when it really started helping me. And the other guys too. I know they felt the same way, that if they could help someone like Jim Braun and Doc, I know that we've talked about it before, and Tony and Craig, that, you know, if we could talk to some of these veterans that are been on 2, 3, 4 tours, it's terrible. And it shouldn't have to be that way. It's those veterans are going to have problems. You can't help but have problems. And if we could get with them or get them to watch this, I think we could help them take some shortcuts to a better life.
Oh, yeah, you what, Dustin?
I said that's the hope.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have a 50-year head start. And there is a commonality, you know, to the experience of war. You know, it's not just Vietnam, it's World War II. You know, all the way back to, you know, looking at poetry that was written by Homer about, you know, what Achilles was feeling in the Peloponnesian Wars. It's the same thoughts all the way. So, and that's why I think it's really great that you guys are willing to say, like, this is how I feel, like, this is normal. You're not, you know, there's nothing wrong with feeling this. This is a normal thing. And it's okay to talk about it. And for you, Mary, you know, like we said, the spouses are a very key, important part in this. Like, what advice would you give to spouses, you know, wives and now husbands, with women being deployed?
Well, I think trying to get over it, you always need something to look forward to. I think that's the key to getting bogged down in it. I mean, I don't want to put it that way really, but he would just get, you know, not really feeling sorry for himself, but so involved in thinking and letting it run through his mind all the time. And I always tried to give him something to look forward to. For years, he looked forward to walking our daughter down the aisle when she got married, and that worked out well. We have a really nice picture of him, and he was really, really happy that day. But something to keep him going, because sometimes he wasn't quite sure that life was worth living. He just couldn't get that out of his head. It went around and around, and he lost a friend to some of that. His friend that lost his legs in Vietnam, he had a lot of that, and I don't know, somehow or other he just couldn't let it go either. And that's what I always told him anyway. You have something, and I always try to think of something that he could look forward to. I think you need that. I think that's one of the most important things, that so that you know life is worth living well. And we had 2 kids that he adored and still does, and now the grandkids and all that. So he's got all that. But that's what makes life worth living for sure.
Dustin?
I was just gonna say hunting season.
Yep. And taking the kids fishing and hunting and that kind of stuff. Yep, that's been big.
So what do you hunt for, Duane?
I already got it. No, I enjoy deer hunting, bow hunting, and just being out in the woods. I don't like rifle hunting so much, as people could hurt you out there, you know, and some of them get kind of careless, and I don't know, this sudden, if I know a gun's going off, it's one thing, but if I still hit the ground if something goes off behind me. And I realize I'll probably never get over it, which is fine. You know, I usually make a joke up and say, well, my wife beats me all the time or something. And
What did you do to?
I'm pretty mean.
But with the grandkids too, it's, you know, I just love being retired and being able to be with my grandkids, take them fishing and learning them how to hunt, to teach them the way to do it, and they're so much help in this whole process. I'm sure they have no idea how much help they are, but they're all help.
Maybe they're watching right now.
Maybe they are.
They ask a lot of questions. They ask him a lot. They want to know about all that. 2 of them especially. But he's doing much better. He's, you know, we have one grandson that even took that CBS video to school when he was in 7th grade. The teacher called and asked, is it something the kids can see? But they watched it first, and then they showed it to him, and they talked about it then in school, and he told them what all his grandpa had told them. So it was,
Yeah, they get the funnier version of, you know, some stuff that happened. And I had one of them one time ask me, you know, did you win the war? And it's the whole thing is over and over. I told him, I said, you know, nobody wins the war. Everybody loses. Both sides lose. And it can't be replaced. You get thinking about that now. If you're got an NBA laying there, you go through his pockets looking for papers and anything he might be carrying. I had a hunting knife I brought home. It was an American-made hunting knife, and he had taken it off another American And I think that's the only thing I brought back was that knife. But you get looking at his pictures of his kids, his family in that billfold. Usually it wasn't even a billfold. They just had it wrapped in plastic so it wouldn't get wet. And I think that brings, a lot of things in perspective to the way I feel now.
Well, I mean, it is, like we asked Doc, I'll ask you. Did you declare war on Vietnam? Was that your decision?
No, we were just doing what we were told.
No one consulted you. You weren't involved in any talks with the president. Like,
No, I would have probably, if I could have talked to him, I'd have probably talked him out of it, or tried to. But
yeah, I mean, it is two governments didn't like each other, but on the other side, they were just guys as well and told to go do something.
Yep.
So, I don't want to take too many of the questions, Dustin, although I do anyway.
You always do. Your mic is better. We'll call it your mic is better. Fine. No, my question was, all my questions have been answered, man.
All right, and
Except Mary, if you've got any pie recipes you want to share with me, I'm super up for it. Your
I got a
pies
good
are-
apple pie one.
I would hope you have an apple pie recipe, Wisconsin and part of the
Right.
USA.
Right.
And we're looking forward to hopefully being able to come see you this summer. Get some more frozen custard.
That would be great.
Are they called the concretes there? That's what we got last time?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what they
Yeah.
had. Yep.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
oh,
I just remember sitting there, we just had this huge meal and I'm full and you're like, all right, we're going to get ice cream now. I was like, all right, yeah, when in Rome,
yeah. What was that burger that you made up with the?
I sent a picture to my wife. You had made the steaks, but then I had a little dinner roll. So I cut the dinner roll in half and put the steak inside, made it look like that was my sandwich and texted it to her. She's like, that is so gross. Not actually a sandwich, but
I
it'd be
think
cool.
there was a pancake in there too.
Yeah,
if I don't.
yeah, he made up his own pancake burger or whatever that was.
In Louisiana, yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
blueberry pancake burger. I noticed that IHOP took we were for everyone else, we were in Louisiana after IHOP did that whole burger thing, International House of Burgers. So we told them that they should make a pancake burger, and we'd gone there a couple times, and Duane ordered a hamburger, but instead of a bun, he got it between blueberry pancakes, and I was like, well, crap, I'm the one talking crap. I guess I ought to get one too. So we joked that they should do it, and I noticed a couple months ago they had pancake burgers. So
Yeah, I haven't felt that good since.
it was fine until it fell apart halfway through because of the whipped cream and syrup that degraded the bun.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Yeah,
They were all bad decisions, Mary. They
it
were
came
all
with a bib.
Yeah, well, you know what? Maple syrup goes with everything. It was
Yeah.
I think Dustin ate a couple of them.
I definitely had one. I can't vouch.
actually, I have to thank the veterans for that mini reunion we're at in Vegas. We rolled into town the first night and went to the Harley Davidson Cafe, which is no more. But they had this gigantic burger, like 4 patties, like the inner bun, everything. I told Dustin, like, oh, you should eat that. He's like, oh, you don't get that on the first night. And he thought when do you go to the same restaurant multiple times in Vegas? He said, if only we were here on the last night. And so then on the last night, you guys called us and said, hey, all the veterans are having dinner. Come join us. And I said, okay, where do we go? And you said the Harley Davidson Cafe.
He hung up the phone and he goes, "Yeah!"
He's like, what? It's like, no problem. Dad, and he grabs the menu. I'm like, you don't need a menu. You're getting that burger.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun that trip.
Yeah.
What do you guys
I think you were feeling that the next day when we drove out of there, huh?
I have never been thin again.
But yeah, I mean, I think this has been, like we've talked about in terms of for the veterans coming home. I think what you said, has a lot of merit, and I hope people do take that to heart. That talking is really important. And even if one person hears this message and says, I'd like to talk to my wife, talk to my husband, my daughter, and for you, Mary, a veteran your spouse comes to you and says, I'd like to talk, what would you tell that, the spouse or on the receiving end? How should they go about that?
Well, I don't know. I think that, like I said, something to look forward to. Listen to whatever they have to say, definitely. And it's when they come home, it was like I always liken it to being brainwashed, that they had to kill or be killed, something that was not, them at all. And I think they're afraid to talk because of that, because people are going to look at them like, that's awful. Well, it is, but it was either that or they'd be dead and they wouldn't be here. So you need to remember, if they're going to talk to you, you need to take all that into consideration and realize that may be what's holding them back, because it's another thing about when he came home. It was like he was the adrenaline was pumping all the time when he was over there, and then he comes home and he's like, and I'm sure this is the way it is for a lot of people, and especially where he lived in a place where it was just a tavern and a feed mill, and that was it. And then nothing is going on, I mean, it was from being brainwashed like that and the adrenaline pumping all the time, and then to come back. And I mean, it's a huge change, and I don't think a lot of people think about that, but I think you have to be open-minded and listen to them, and not freak out, with some of the stuff they tell you, because they didn't want to do it. For sure. It was, they were being told what to do, and it was either that or they wouldn't be here.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And it's not something like you're going to sit down and have one conversation and everything's good. It is a process, but when you're talking about the mindset, it is important for people to know that, because I feel a lot of the gulf is just not understanding that experience. Like it's just a different experience. You stayed home and were going to high school. He went off to war where it was kill or be killed. Nothing wrong with either path, but like Duane, like you said, you hear a loud noise and you hit the dirt, but because in Vietnam, a loud noise meant there's probably a bullet coming your way and you should probably hit the dirt. It's just a different experience. And I kind of liken it to, for me as a former law enforcement, when I watch law enforcement movies, I can tell within 15 seconds if it was written or consulted on someone who's actually been law enforcement, or written by someone who has watched law enforcement movies and just thinks this is the way it is, because there's that gulf. And so it's not understanding the other side. And I think your advice of saying, there is a different experience here, understand that going in, and be willing to learn about that experience, I think will bridge a lot of gaps. So.
And I think that's how we survived. That was our job. We'd get up in the morning, we'd wait for a whistle or wait to be briefed on going in on a mission to check out a bunker complex or some movement they'd spotted somewhere. And you didn't think about it. It was just you go out, and if you see them, you shoot them, and you hope you get back that night. I remember Jack Hughley said it's not like a switch you can turn off and turn on. I thought that was put rather well, because you can turn that switch off on us, but everything is still in motion. It doesn't go off.
Yeah, he said a mouthful when he said that. I said, boy, that's it. You can't. And that's where the problems come in. It's almost like everybody expects you to turn it off, and you can't.
And
That's
yeah, it like the debriefings after you come, get ready to ETS. We had no briefings. They just said, have a good time. And I don't know how it is now. I hope that's improved for our veterans that are coming home now. But if you need debriefing, I think that other vets can help you a lot. And don't be afraid to use them. Just think of the weight that comes off your chest when you can tell somebody what you did or how things were, and it takes a good listener. I was fortunate. I had one. She's been my rock ever since, and it's not easy.
he had to do this himself. He always gives me so much credit. It had to be him.
I'm going to side with him on this, Mary.
Well, thanks, but
Exactly. Yeah, thanks for being America, you guys.
Well,
That's, like Dustin said, that covers everything for me. Do you have anything else popped up, or is it still covering everything for you, Dustin?
I'm there, man.
All right. Do you guys have anything, any last parting shots for our audience before I thank them for listening?
well, I would just like to say that since you guys have gotten him talking, he's way freer talking about this now. And like I told you, Dave, he talked to that girl that wanted to get a scholarship. He talked to her freely, and that never would have happened before. But it's also opened things up for me too, like all the wives. Because I never had anybody to talk to other than him, and it was just same stuff back and forth. And now I've got all those girls, and I just love them, and it's just really wonderful to talk to them. So it's worked for both of us. So I have to say thank you to both of you guys.
You're very welcome.
You're welcome. Yes. Now I'm going to be like you, Mary, and say, no, I don't think it was us.
All we did was have a party. That's all. We just invited you guys. Thanks for showing up.
Yeah,
Well, it
we
turned
turned
out really
on the
well.
camera and pointed it in the right direction. Well, Charles did all that.
Yeah, I was gonna say we didn't do any of that, Dave.
Yeah, Charles is the one behind the scenes doing everything, and then
you make sure and tell him hi.
we'll do. And then I had a list of questions that pretty much went out the window, like 10 seconds into the interview. Just go from there. But so for everyone watching, I'd like to thank you for making it to the end of the podcast. Hopefully this was episode 2. Hopefully you're like, yay, let's go episode 3. If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends to subscribe. Facebook, all of that, where we release it. As we get more episodes, we'll be starting a website to consolidate it all, but we're just 2 guys doing it. I'm going to hit stop.
Get done grading.
Yeah. When I find my cursor, there it is. I'm going to hit stop recording, but don't hang up on us, Duane and Mary.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. If you're watching on Facebook, it's going to say the video was interrupted, but it's actually just ending. Don't hit your computer. Thanks a lot.